in today's episode of Lacuna Uprising, we will discuss the importance of bringing women together with Dr. Laura Batson. So our guest today is Laura. She's a naturopathic doctor with a passion for getting women together and leading a full moon circle. So, hi, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Laura.
Thank you, Rochelle. It's so wonderful to be here and have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing as a naturopathic doctor for about 13 years now, and most of that work is one-on-one with women as individual one-on-one appointments. And over the last couple of years, been breaking out of that mold and realizing the importance of community and bringing women together in our healing. And so much more can emerge in those circles of sharing and the reciprocity and synchronizing with one another for the healing, and doing that also under the full moon. And so synchronizing, bring those rhythms back with nature and ourselves again, which, yeah, definitely then feeds in beautifully to cycle syncing and seed syncing and all of that you do. So yeah, very passionate about it all.
So I've noticed women really wanting to get together in person. I feel over the past few years, I keep hearing this from women is like the importance of coming together. Have you kind of noticed that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think no doubt the pandemic spurred on a lot
Yeah.
of this, and people realizing the importance of community and connection. And, a lot that also emerged around that time were conversations around decolonization and decolonizing medicine in particular,
Mhm.
going back to our traditional roots, which as women, we always gathered together to heal. That's how we always healed, and often in relationship with the cycles of nature on the land, under the moon. And yeah, so you feel those calls, that rising is happening, and we're reawakening to what we always knew for so long, how important this is.
Absolutely. So you have been leading a full moon circle um, for the past few years now.
Yeah,
So can
yeah.
you speak a little bit about that and how you came to that and
Hmm. Yeah, it began with a course that I was running that was called Revolution Medicine.
okay.
And so it was looking at how do we decolonize our minds, bodies, souls, spirits, communities, and come back to our indigenous ways of knowing. And so my ancestry, indigenous ancestry, is West African and European Celtic pagan. So white and black, European, African, and I'm always reconciling those knowledge systems
Yeah.
within me. And I really felt that it was important to bring these indigenous ways of knowing back into the world from my ancestral knowings, and called together a group of other women who also wanted to do the same. And so we got together once a month through this course, and we were looking at, yeah, how do we decolonize, delinearize, I call it. Often, yeah, the modern colonial world is very linear, start and go and just keep going, and is can also be qualified as a more masculine way of being in the world, just that linear straight line that you
A to
stay on.
B
Yeah,
or
everything's standardized, and yeah, you just go. And yeah, realizing that our traditional and indigenous ways of knowing, especially the deep feminine ways of knowing, we're always cyclical. We're always circular in nature, not linear. And so that's a lot of what we were exploring. How do we bring back our non-linear, circular, deep feminine, indigenous ways of knowing back into the world? So we had circled together for 9 months exploring these concepts. And then at the end, we all felt a bit anxious about it ending. It's like, well, what are we going to do? Like the circle doesn't end, the circle goes on forever. So how do we keep circling? And it was one of the women in the group who suggested, well, why don't we just keep getting together on the full moon every month?
okay.
And that's how it began. And yeah, and it just self-organizes every month. There's a whole email list of probably about 50 women now that we've accumulated because we'll tell our friends and sisters and whatnot. And so every month someone will sort of pipe up and say, hey, I'll host, or I know a place in nature I want to bring us. And then they gather us together and we bring food and music and tarot cards and whatever we want to explore together that brings us into that deeper knowing and connectedness. We practice rituals. I bring Indigenous African rituals into the practice often. So, yeah, and we play. A lot of it is just bringing back the play and the joy of being in community with nature. Um, so those are the full moon circles, and then often weaving in teachings as it relates to the deep feminine, our cycles. And so, yeah, having you come out to the moon circle once and talking about our cycles and this syncing with the seeds. So, yeah, things like that will happen spontaneously. Someone will be like, hey, I know someone.
Yeah.
Come and teach us. What do you know? And it's just about knowledge sharing and coming back to the knowledge that, yeah, unfortunately was taken away from us through processes of colonization
Mhm.
for the centuries. Yeah.
So something that stood out for me in what you just said was that after 9 months, something was birthed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely.
absolute cycle of growth and birth, and our not our natural cycle, in fact, of gestation. You guys naturally birth a whole community, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a 9 month gestation period of coming together intimately, which is
Yeah,
something else that I feel is maybe missing in a lot of the dominant wellness world culture is, there's a lot of like quick fix weekend retreats.
right.
Whereas, to do that deeper work to really birth something new and sustainable in the world, you need that long process and coming
Yep.
together and dispersing, coming together and dispersing again. And every time you come together every month, it's like we go deeper and deeper into what is it that we want to birth into the world. And then you build that momentum to really do it and make a sustainable action then in the world. So yeah, that's so important.
That's really an important thing to take away, and kind of something to remind myself of as well, right? Like, because we live in a society where things are so fast moving, and sometimes even within my business, I just feel like, oh, things aren't moving along as fast as I hoped or whatnot. But the truth is, it takes time to get momentum and
Yeah.
to just remember to breathe, and things do progress, and maybe at a slower pace than what society thinks it should. uh
Yeah, the slow healing movement, we call
Absolutely.
it.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure you encounter that a lot as a naturopath, because seed cycling is something that is a long term. I continuously tell my clients, like, it's a lifestyle. It's not a quick fix. It's something that you live with you day by day and whatnot. All natural products takes time.
Yeah, and in relation to that with hormones, I always tell women at least 3 months. Give
Minimum.
yourself a minimum at least three
Yes.
cycles before your hormones start to come into balance.
Start.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you have to maintain. It's not a one-time fix. It's like it's a
Mhm.
lifestyle change. And so you had the experience of actually trying Alchemy Delight seed cycling bars for, I think you did about 3 months. But you had mentioned that, like, the most beneficial aspect for you was really the knowledge from cycle syncing that you
Mhm.
gained from it. You want to speak a little bit about your experience embracing the knowledge from cycle syncing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved just connecting to the phases of my cycle more deeply.
Mhm.
And so, we often can be hard on ourselves when we don't practice our own medicine very well, but it's one of the areas in my own health and wellness where I've not paid much attention to my cycles. They've always been, fairly regular and easy, and I've not had many issues around my menstrual cycles. And so it's always been something for me to kind of easily ignore.
Yep.
It comes, it goes, and whenever it comes, it comes. I never pay attention. I don't have any apps. I have no way of tracking.
Right.
But I always get a sense a couple days, oh, I think it's coming. Okay, I'm ready. Um, but I've not paid much attention to it, and especially to week by week, the different phases of my cycle. And so it was a really beautiful experience to, yeah, to get the bars. And not only did I purchase the bars, but then I did. I read all the information that you provided as well about, the different phases of your cycle and when, you can have more energy to be active, when to be more contemplative, when to be more intellectual, when to be more, and with your exercise and with the work and all of that. And it got me inspired to then also pair the bars with some teas. And so I custom made some herbal teas for myself as well for each of the
Ew.
phases. And I have my ovulation, which I call go time tea. So it's
Nice.
got all these herbal medicines like the withania and holy basil and things that help your nervous system and adrenals for go time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I have the more relaxation teas and the anti-cramping and whatnot. And so it just got me so much deeper into thinking how to sync all of these phases of my life and to be aware of when I'm in that down phase and in the luteal phase, and it's okay to be a bit more quiet.
Yep.
It's okay even to nourish myself a little more with some carbohydrates. I don't need to be guilty
Yes.
about the extra chocolate and, things I'm taking in. I'm nourishing myself. And so the permission to be in the flow, to be in that synchronicity with my cycle was beautiful.
Awesome.
And then I loved the bars as like a treat because
Right?
for me they became like my candy bars for the day. And so it was like not just medicine, but I get to have a treat with my medicine, which is always a delight. So alchemy delights for sure. It was a delight. Yeah.
Awesome. So actually that's something that clients have told me in the past is like just allowing yourself to to feel, and like again, speaking on society, we're such in a fast pace, we think that we just need to move forward and keep going. But this awareness absolutely kind of allows us to be in
Mhm.
flow of our within our cycle. And this is something that I truly believe um, this is our superpower. And once we understand how to tune into all these different energies that we'll encounter within our cycle, then we can use that to our advantage. And this is where the real magic happens is and I'm not perfect at this. And it's not anything that you need to be perfect at. You don't have to sync everything in your life. But behind my computer, I have a calendar and I, I have a highlighter for the colors of each season of my cycle. And although I can't adjust my entire life according to my cycle, I can tune into the energies that I'm going to encounter, right? And like today, I know I'm in fall, so maybe it's going to take a little bit more effort for me to get my words flowing and whatnot. But
Mhm.
just bringing that awareness, um and then tuning into like, okay, when you're in summer and you're super social, you want to really kind of tune into that energy. And so um again, I think that that's such a big part of this magic is having women understand that this doesn't have to hinder your
Mhm.
life. This is actually where you get your power from. So this leads me to our signature question, which is having this deeper understanding of our cycle and the energies within our cycle. I believe this is something that can help transform a society. And I can see how far reaching it can go. But I'm interested in knowing your perspective and where your imagination leads you when you think, okay, well, where could this change society as a whole?
Hmm. I love this question.
Right?
And that word that you kept using there of tuning in, and it speaks so much to me of like the rhythms and the music and being in tune with
Yep.
the cycles. And I feel so much of society right now through processes of colonization, linearization, division, hyper individualism. We've divided and separated everything into its boxes, and even the way the disciplines that we learn are all individualized and linearized. Each of us living in our separate homes, in the cubicles at work, and everything is just, and that has like just this flattening effect and mechanization effect on society. We're all just in these machine modes. And when you come back to those rhythms that are naturally inside of us, and you tune into the rhythms, which is, I mean, everything is in rhythm. Even it's not just that the hormones are cycling in a rhythm, but your ovaries are pulsing those hormones out. They aren't going out. Estrogen is not just being released on a continuous basis, it's being pulsed, and there's a rhythm to that pulse. And your thyroid is pulsing TSH, or well, T3 and T4, your thyroid is pulsing that, and your adrenals are pulsing cortisol. All these hormones in our body are all pulsing at different rates and rhythms, and they're all tuned into each other so that they can have coherence, so that the ecosystem of our bodies can be regulated and can harness the power and harness that energy that's naturally within it. And so much of what we've done in our world, including the foods and things we put into our bodies, just flatten, or pharmaceutical drugs that flatten and linearize the pulsing. You take a drug at the same time every day, and it just will give you the same amount of that substance over and over again. You just flatline all of the hormones in your body. You get flatlined. And so when I think of, removing everything that is flatlining us on a societal level and tuning back into the pulsing and the rhythms and the cycling, it just naturally from the inside out brings us back into the natural rhythms that exist in the universe and nature, the rhythm of the moon. And they could think of the moon as pulsing every month, being full and coming back in, being full and coming back in. And the waters pulse with that of the tides, that's a pulsing. And all of the calls and rhythms of the birds, and that, the birds are all coming back this month. That's a pulse and a rhythm every year of the birds coming back every April. And you hear it and you hear the music. So all around us, we're embedded in these ecosystems of music and rhythm. And as humans, we've isolated ourselves out from that and linearized and boxed ourselves, so we're no longer hearing the rhythms and the music of life. And by even just being back in tune with our own rhythms and music of our body, that will reconnect us with the rhythms and the music of our ecosystems. And to me, that is the ultimate decolonization, is coming back into harmony with all of life, with the land, with every single person having a place and a purpose and a reason for being in this ecosystem, as opposed to some standardized goal that we're all supposed to be reaching in the colonial world. It's like honoring that we each have an instrument in this symphony that we're supposed to know and be in tune with. And if we're in tune with our instrument, then the symphony can be played as a whole in society. If we're all trying to just standardize our instrument to one sound that's linear and has no rhythm, then I don't know, I don't like the music of that type of society so much. So I work a lot in those metaphors of the rhythm and the music and coming back into symphony and coherence. And that happens with us, coming back into our own rhythms and symphonies in our own bodies, and then bringing that into how we move and motion in the world. And so, I mean, it's interesting because, when we decided as a group that we wanted to meet on the full moon, for the first year, we met on the full moon of the month, which doesn't fall into the linearized calendar of our work lives, of our schedules, of our, children's soccer practice or whatever. Everything else has been, organized around this linear calendar. Well, the moon doesn't care about that. She comes out full when when her rhythm says I'm full. If it's the middle of the week, if it's a Wednesday night, then that's when it is. And so we did attempt to all reorganize our rhythms to the moon and show up on the full moon. But as we're in this transition period of trying to come back into harmony with nature, there is, yeah, sometimes a bit of compromise that we're making. And so what
Absolutely.
happened was we realized most of us just couldn't because our schedules are so locked in
Yep.
to the colonized way of scheduling. And so,
Monday to
um,
Friday, 9 to 5.
exactly. And so we compromised, and now we meet on the Sunday closest to the full moon. So still trying to come back into that rhythm of meeting on the full moon. But I do believe the more we can do that, like you said, we don't have to be perfect about everything. And as a society, as we're trying to transition out of these linear mechanistic to the holistic ecological ways of being, there's a transition period where we do what we can to resync ourselves,
Absolutely.
as close as we can to the full moon. And eventually, one day, we will have a society organized around these rhythms to begin with, and we don't have to compromise. But yeah, that's what I see as possible for us as a society is to slowly make the changes where we can. That
Absolutely.
eventually that will galvanize that energy and momentum to reorganize ourselves around nature and what is natural to begin with. So, yeah, I think we can revolutionize
I
through
think
it.
so too. And again, it's something to be said that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, and I don't think it ever will. I don't think you can ever really, because we're in two different worlds. We're trying to collide two different worlds, and you just try to do the very best. And what works and how can you stay consistent with it too, right? And our bodies are so forgiving, and you still get that energy from the moon. You still get that synergy with women, even if it's
Exactly.
2 days before it. You still have that energy, that synergy. I think that people get a bit scared with um, having to do it perfectly, and then we don't even try because it feels overwhelming. Like, I
Yeah.
can't ever sync
Yeah.
my lifestyle to this. Well, you don't need to. You can pick one thing or two things or integrate one
Hmm.
thing and do that for a few months. And so, yeah, let's not get overwhelmed, but let's begin somewhere.
Really, yeah, just taking those small steps to re-rhythm yourself back
Absolutely.
into a pattern. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Doesn't need to be perfect because we're not perfect. Life is not perfect, right? So,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, I mean that again comes from that linear cosmology of perfection. And I always talk about the freehand circle that we're drawing. We're coming back to the circular cosmology, but not a Euclidean circle that's a perfect circle. It's a freehand circle. It's got all the
yes,
irregularities and
I like
everything
that.
that, yeah,
Yeah, it's very forgiving. And I feel like I can tackle that. I can do a circle that's not perfect, you
yeah,
know, and
yeah. It's perfectly you is what it is. That's yeah.
spiraling forward, it's
Hmm.
a spiral that's,
Yeah, yeah.
forward. And so saying that, um, where can people find you if they want to book a session with
Hmm.
you as a naturopathic doctor? Do you specialize in one thing or another as a naturopathic doctor, or you see pretty much anyone? Um,
Hmm. Yeah, I have a general practice. I don't usually treat children, so it's mostly adults that my practice is geared towards. And most of the people that come in, the demographics, I would say, are middle-aged women who end up finding me,
yeah,
and many with hormonal concerns, if it's PCOS or endometriosis or menopause and so forth. So I do circle in a lot of those realms of therapies. But I treat everything. And, in particular, I have an affinity to want to go to those soul places with people. So people that are feeling overwhelmed with this world, that they don't quite fit in with the structures that are around them and they know that that's impacting their health, if it's causing insomnia, anxiety, chronic inflammation, pain, and so forth. So I love, yeah, working with people that are that kind of awareness that there's a connection between what I'm experiencing and the dysfunction that's going on in the world around me. And I know it's not my problem, but I'm having to deal with the problem of it, and
Or
supporting and empowering those to know what you can do to help yourself to feel better, to liberate those vitalities and energies from within. Because there's so much we can do with the plant medicines and nutrition and mindfulness practices and acupuncture to liberate the healing potentials from within in such a way that then you can be an effective agent for healing the world around you. Because that's
like
the
that,
root cause of your disease, is the world around you, most likely.
right?
But yeah, from within we can heal outside. And so I would say, yeah, that's, if there's a specialty, it's more of a specialty in terms of um, the ethos and philosophy of why people often come to see me is, yeah, they're connected in those ways to wanting to decolonize, wanting to liberate their indigenous, land-based, nature-based ways of knowing and healing. And so the symptoms themselves can be anything that you're coming in with, if it's chronic migraines or eczema or hormonal imbalances, but getting at the root cause of it being, yeah, what's going on in society as the bigger issue, but you also have agency to heal from within and to take steps that will help you to remedy these diseases that you are the recipient of being in this world.
I love that you make that association because, yeah, the impact of society around us is such a large one on it impacts our health.
Exactly. Yeah. The chronic stress, the chronic go, 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 the hyper, yeah, masculine, oppressive ways of our world really does impact our health and impacts some bodies more than others. And so I work a lot with marginalized communities. I work a lot with people who, yeah, historically and currently experience the systems of oppression around us. And yeah, so I'm really passionate about all of that. And then in terms of finding me, so my personal website is nonlinearmedicine.com. So
I'll
all one
include
word.
that. I'll include that
Yeah.
in below with the link and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's the main website that then you can access my clinic and access
Okay,
the courses and circles and other things that I offer. And I practice out of the Somerset Health and Wellness Clinic in Ottawa. Yeah.
perfect. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for joining me today. It
Oh,
was an
thank
absolute
you.
honor to have you, and um, I'm so happy we've met
Me
and
too.
we've had really lovely conversations. And I'd like to
Hmm.
continue. I think we have a lot of common interests, and so again, thank you so much. And it's been wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you, Rochelle. Yeah, it's been such a delight to use that word
Absolutely.
again, to meet you and come across your work and to be weaving our work together. So thank you.
Absolutely. And we're not done.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have
we're
more
doing
work to do
it.
for sure.
Amazing.
So thank you. I appreciate your time. Bye,
Thank
Laura.
you. Bye.